Margaret Jenkins had worked the breakfast shift at Ray's Diner for nearly 28 years. The regulars knew her by name, and she knew exactly how they liked their eggs scrambled soft for Mr. Dobbins, over easy for the couple that came in every Sunday after church. Her hands were worn, her back curved from years of balancing plates, and her voice rasped slightly from decades of shouting orders over the kitchen clatter. She wasn't just a waitress. She was the soul of that place. But the world doesn't care how long you've served, how many cups of coffee you've poured, or how often you smiled through aching feet. The world moves fast. And Margaret, at 60, was a relic of an analog heart in a digital world. On a cold Tuesday morning, it happened. A young man walked into the diner just before closing. He looked like he hadn't slept for days. A messy hair, a jacket 2 sizes too big, and eyes full of desperation. Margaret spotted him from behind the counter. He walked slowly, cautiously, and took the booth farthest from the door. She approached with the worn leather-bound menu and her usual line, "Coffee first, or do you need a minute to decide?" His voice was soft. "Just coffee, please." Black. She poured it without asking for payment. She could see the signs, the trembling hands, the distant stare, the way he clutched the warm mug like it was the only good thing that had happened to him in days. When she returned to check on him, his head was resting on the table, his coffee untouched. "You okay, sweetheart?" He looked up, startled. Then, quietly, he said, "I haven't eaten in 2 days. I'm trying to figure out what to do." There were rules. No handouts. Ray, the diner owner, made that clear every month. "We're not a soup kitchen," he'd grumble. "We run a business." But Margaret didn't think twice. She slid into the booth across from him and said, "Stay right there." She paid for his meal herself, eggs, bacon, toast, and a side of fries. She even added a slice of apple pie, warm just right, with whipped cream on top. He tried to thank her, but she waved it off. "Eat. That's thanks enough." But nothing in this world goes unnoticed. The new manager, Jason, a young, corporate, colder, had been watching. Margaret didn't see him come out of the back room, didn't notice him standing by the register, watching her break the rules. The next morning, he called her in before her shift. "You gave food to a customer without payment," he said. "I paid for it myself." "Still theft," he said coldly. "Violation of policy." "You're firing me, after 28 years. It's not personal." But it was personal. Margaret had poured her life into that diner. She had sacrificed holidays, stood on aching knees through snowstorms, and even cleaned up after the cook when he drank too much and passed out in the back. And now, for a plate of eggs and a piece of pie, she was out on the street. She didn't cry. Not at first. She went home, made herself a cup of tea, and sat at her kitchen table for hours, staring out the window as the world passed by without her. She wasn't just jobless, she was invisible. At 60, she knew finding work wouldn't be easy. She didn't have a RA copyright, some A copyright. She didn't know how to network. The idea of interviews terrified her. She barely slept that night. But the next morning, something strange happened. A letter. Not an email, a real letter, tucked under her door. It was handwritten on thick paper. "To the woman who gave me a meal when I was at my lowest." She read it once, then again. It was from the young man. His name was Daniel. He explained that he had just returned from a stint in rehab, that he'd been living in his car after losing his job. That morning at the diner, he had been thinking about ending his life. "But you sat down across from me like I was a person," he wrote. "You reminded me that someone still cared. You didn't ask questions. You didn't judge. You just gave." He explained that he was now staying with his sister, attending counseling, and looking for work. And he had told his sister, who happened to be a local news reporter, about the woman at the diner who had saved his life with coffee, eggs, and kindness. That afternoon, the phone started ringing. First, it was a local radio station. Then the news. Then people from all over started sending messages. They called her a hero, a saint, an angel in an apron. And then came the twist no one expected. A man named Alan Birch, the CEO of a regional cafe copyright chain, had seen the story on the news. He was in his late 50s himself, and his mother had once worked as a waitress to support him after his father left. He reached out to Margaret directly. "I have 32 locations," he said. "I want you to train my new staff, not to serve coffee, but to serve people." "What you do, that's the kind of culture I want in my company." She hesitated. "I'm not a teacher, I've just been doing the job." "No," he said. "You've been setting the standard." He offered her a generous salary, benefits, a flexible schedule. She could design her own training program, travel if she wanted, or work from home. He even offered to send someone to help her set up her first presentation. Margaret accepted. 3 months later, she stood in front of her first class of recruits. No uniform, no clatter of dishes, just her voice, calm and warm. She told them the story of Danielle, of how she broke a rule and got fired, and of how sometimes the right thing isn't the easy thing, but it's still the right thing. She ended the session with a quote she'd taped to her fridge for years: "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about." Ray's Diner shut down 2 months after Margaret left. Jason's cold efficiency drove away the regulars. The warmth was gone, and without Margaret, it was just another place with pancakes and coffee. But Margaret, she found herself again. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a leader, a mentor, a symbol of something quietly powerful, a compassion. She taught dozens of young employees over the next year. People barely out of high school, women restarting after divorce, men trying to stay sober. They all came in with questions, and Margaret, she gave them answers. And pie, always pie. Narration ends.